Sometimes I come down to the veg patch and I think, what am I going to do today? And today is one of those days. I literally don't know what I'm going to get up to. So let's just see how it unfolds. So this is what I love to have happen, is this integration of ornamentals to edibles. And that's what these border gardens are about. So we've got the border beds and they're predominantly food based. But then we have these border gardens and they're the integration of the edibles and the ornamentals. And it just expands the garden so that the large growers like pumpkins and watermelons, rock melons, things that want to sprawl out can have the space that they need. And here's a great example. This is a zucchini, and it's just, instead of it taking up that entire border bed, I've encouraged it to spill over and climb over and come down into the border garden, which just makes so much more use. And when the edibles aren't in season, it still looks nice with the ornamentals. And the other thing that it does is it helps to manage the weeds, because if I was just to have the border bed, I'd have to mow right up against there and I'd never quite get it all. And because I'm a lazy gardener, there's no way I'm going to get the whippersnipper out and manage all of that every single time. So what I've done is I've brought the garden bed out from the border bed to the border garden. This border garden bed has the long cut edge. Now if you have seen the video where I showed you how to do those lawn edges, and if you're interested in learning it, there is a video on that. But I've cut all of this with that moon spade that I've showed you before, and then I just maintain it with the edger. And what I've done is I actually mowed these angles. So I mowed these paths before I built the border. And these paths are made specifically to fit my ride-on mower. So it means that nothing gets left behind. I don't have to get off the mower. I just keep whizzing it around, get the job done quicker, and it keeps things maintained. That's another lazy gardener approach. Here's the wisteria that was planted a couple of weeks ago in one of the videos, and it's doing pretty well. I have this raggedy old piece of shade cloth tied to the fence. Looks great, but realistically what it does is when the summer sun beams down on the wisteria, it really does take a lot out of it. It's a new plant to the garden, so all I do is flip it over and it reduces some of that heat exposure for the summer. Let's have a look. It's climbing beautifully on the new stainless steel wire trellising. Look at that. It's just loving it. It's got all the support it needs. It's just beautiful. And here's one that needs a little bit of guidance. Twist him on there. I'll be really gentle with these tips. Look at that. We're getting the jobs done. Alright. On this side, we've got the zucchini, and I was saying I'm letting that zucchini spill over into the border garden, but I've encouraged this one for something different, to climb up this trellis. Give that a little bit of support. And there we go. Be interesting to see how that goes. the side of the zucchini, down in here I've got a jasmine growing. To train it to come up, I've just hooked a pin in the ground, so I just make that out of a bit of fencing wire, tied my string on, and then I've wrapped it around until I tied it off here. So once it gets up to here, then I'll start feeding it onto here, and it'll eventually come up and over, just like the wisteria up and over is hopefully going to look quite nice. And here in Veg Temple 7, a couple of weeks ago we took all of the elephant garlic out, and this is the remnants of that. Now I'm still behind on this one, I haven't reset this bed. And while I'm here, I might as well get rid of this bit of compost mess. And down in here in the compost, you can see I've got some fabulous shredded paper. This came from one of my beautiful yoga clients, and she works in an office and delivers me this massive bag of beautiful shredded paper. So it's a real foundation to the compost that we make here in the Shine More Being Veg Patch. Now I've got the shovel in here because I've been digging or stealing a little bit of the compost. I'm so low on compost because we've been doing so many different projects of late. Here I've got some calcium that's gone in the form of my old lady noises when I bend over. 35 years of yoga, you'd think I'd be better than that. Anyway, keeping it real today. Snail shells. So these are just old snails that I forgot, unfortunately, to take out of the slimy Terminator. I do feel a bit bad about that. And so they naturally broke down, and so they've gone into the compost. So nothing really goes to waste, but it would have been nice for the hens to be able to enjoy them as well. Looking down in here, these bags are the brown shopping bags that you get from Woolworths here in Australia. These bags were pre-soaked, so they went into the box bath. Now this is where I soak any cardboard or any safe paper products that come through. They were in there for probably 2 weeks soaking, and they came out like brand new. I thought, well, you know what, I don't actually think I want to feed those to the worms. If they're going to hold together that well, there's something perhaps not quite right. So I thought I'll see how they go in the compost. So I've tossed them in here. They've been in the compost here as they are for over a month, and they still look as good as new. And I tore them up to increase the surface area, thinking maybe that's got something to do with it. You can still read the text like it's brand new. I'm going to take this out, and I won't ever be putting the shopping bags into the compost. The onions here in Veg Temple 3 are starting to come to their end. The tops are beginning to flop over. And we've got some beauties coming along. Last season I grew probably 10% of what I'm growing this year in terms of onions. And I'm really excited because the homegrown onions have spoilt my palate. I really don't enjoy shop-bought onions anymore. I've gotten so conditioned to having these beautiful, luscious, organic onions right out my back door. It's nothing quite like growing your own groceries. But as you know, I don't tend to grow in monoculture, so I've got the onions in this bed in a large batch, but I also had parsley earlier, I had some garlic in here. I've had a couple of different things over the time that's taken to grow the onions. As the season has progressed and the onions are starting to die down, I've stripped back part of the bed and given it all of the Goddess Brew tonic, and then I've added in the magic mulch and popped in a cucumber and some tomatoes. So this starts to utilize the bed a little bit more. These do require a bit more control around the water because they're demanding more water, so I've got Olas in with those, and I've also got adjustable heads on my sprinklers. With the system running, you can see it's adjustable, so you can move it from being a drip system right through to a full sprinkler head depending on what your plant's needs are, which is just fantastic. And you know, if you don't have anything in there, you can just turn it off entirely, so that I can reduce the water intake for my onions and keep it maximized for my tomatoes and water-loving cucumbers. These ones that are feeding all of the onions are reduced. There's nothing turned on in that area. The ones that are feeding the cucumber and the tomatoes are definitely on. So this is just another way to support the way that I grow, which is generally not in a monoculture. This is about as monoculture as I get, but it's because it's easier to grow the onions in groups because of this specific need. Over here in Veg Temple 2, we've got the silver beet continuing now. It was starting to look pretty sad about 2 weeks ago, and so I spent some time on it by installing the summer shade on the bright side. So this is the northern side, we're in the southern hemisphere in Australia, so this is giving us some protection to that hot, intense Australian sun, and it's just made the world of difference in a very short period of time in creating longevity to the harvest for our silver beet. And in here I've serviced this bed, so I gave it the Goddess Brew blend. I've given it a really good go over. I've stripped it out, I've redone the irrigation, topped it off with some magic mulch, and I'm hoping in the next month or two all of the garden beds will be looking as fabulous as this one. While this garden bed is looking rather fabulous because it's all been serviced, the previous irrigation system, the drippers that I was talking about, the brown ones, not these ones, but the original systems, so these have actually failed up here in the strawberry falls, and it's cost me my strawberries. I'm so disappointed in this. So I'm watering them all now by hand, and I'm giving them some extra love with the hope that they come back. I'll strip back this foliage after a week or two, the dead foliage. I won't do that straight away because with the hot summer heat that we're getting, if I strip that back too soon, anything that's going to come back up out of the strawberry crown is very likely to get burnt. So I'm sort of using that as a sunscreen for now. Put in my new system in there, the new drip irrigation system, and I've got heads to feed each one of those plants, so it should turn around in time, hopefully, if it's not too late. Here is the cold frame, and it's designed for working on the seedlings through the winter. So don't use it now because it is too hot, but generally this is where I'll start most of my seedlings. I don't bother with a glass house, greenhouse type of environment. Not much point to it here in our warm climate. This does the job perfectly and costs a heck of a lot less. There's a lot less maintenance because, as you know, I'm a lazy gardener. And we do everything on a budget to low to no waste as well. and it backs off of the shade house. So we built this shade house ourselves along with the cold frame. I designed it so that the wall of the shade house would become part of the cold frame. So it just utilizes both lots of material. And then moving along, the chaos behind me is really starting to get to me. I like things to be organized and I like them to be practical and beautiful. And this is neither of those things. This is an area that just gets dumped and basically a dump and run. And I have had it managed well in the past, but because we've been so busy in the veg patch and with a number of projects, from building the dove temple to adding in the lavender border beds here, and getting organized for spring, I really have neglected this space here. So this is very high on the cards to be managed in the near future. I've got an old bird aviary that died, and so I've stripped that back, and my favourite humans pop in some shelves in it for me so I can categorise all my pots and stack them up nice and neat, and they won't blow away and be left lying around. So stay tuned for that transformation. Wanted to do a little update while I think of it on the rhubarb, and the powdery mildew for the Lebanese zucchini. Ooh, check that out. See down here, we've got wallabies coming in here. Now I've seen a tiny little joey one that's been coming in, and he's quite confident, but I haven't seen anything larger than the bubbies. These droppings are telling me that they're coming in, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in this space. We tend not to bother us too much here because we leave everything else for them. But boy, oh boy, there's going to be a war if they start touching my veggies. Not really. I talk a big talk. Okay. So here we are with the rhubarb, and what's happened since last week is I've installed the summer shade. Now, summer shades are what I pop on the northern side to help manage the heat. It is absolutely essential in our climate to be able to minimize some of the heat and sun exposure for the plants. Let's revisit this Lebanese zucchini and see what we've got in terms of powdery mildew. It's been perfect conditions for the powdery mildew fungus to grow, and just having a quick look, might have a tiny touch here on this leaf. There's a tiny little spot coming up here and a couple more here. But if we have a look above that leaf, got a couple of tiny spots on that one, and this one, and the other one that we separated, because remember in last week's video. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually shift the plant to move away, just so those leaves aren't touching. There doesn't seem to be anything significant coming up on it. The plant on this side doesn't have any signs of powdery mildew at the moment. This one has got just the beginning, so if I snip out those leaves, we may have this under control, fingers crossed. And that's why I went through those stages with you last week in last week's video, showing you that it's not always about jumping in for the greatest control. I like to let my garden do the work, and I like to keep it fairly natural, and you know why that is, because I'm a lazy gardener. So take out these ones that have got the smallest signs of powdery mildew. I just use a steak knife, I have it on my bench. And I think that's it. What's fascinating me is that the parts of the Lebanese zucchini that are growing near the rhubarb have got zero signs of powdery mildew. That's fascinating me. I'm wondering if it's the nature of the oxalic acid, perhaps, or what. If you've got any ideas, let me know. Scoop these up and we'll take them straight down to the hens. Pop back my knife because then I always know where it is. Nothing frustrates me more than when I come to do a job and I can't find my tools. Oh, that's not true. There's a lot of things that frustrate me more than that, but that's one of them. So this is my very technical way of feeding the hens when I've only got a little bit. And hope it doesn't bop anybody in the head. Well, thanks so much for joining me today in the Shine Wellbeing Veg Patch on this very impromptu and uncensored tour. I hope you got something out of it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a beautiful day. Shine on.